Welcome in. It is Big Ten Today. Great to have you with us. Dave Revson with you. Trent Meacham will join me in just a bit as well. We will look ahead to next season in the Big Ten in men's basketball, plus Wisconsin plays tonight. Get you a few thoughts on that game as well in the NIT. But women's basketball stealing the spotlight last night. It was our big story and a tough night, unfortunately, last night in the Elite Eight for the Big Ten. Couple teams in action. They both fell. Maryland hung close for a while, but ultimately succumbed to undefeated South Carolina, 86-75. Ohio State dropping a 10-point game to number 1 seed Virginia Tech. So both teams falling one win short of a berth in the Final Four. Iowa, of course, the lone Big Ten team to advance to this weekend's festivities in Dallas. And we are joined now by Big Ten Network women's hoops analyst Steph White. And Steph, let's dive right into this. We'll save Iowa and all that excitement and the build up to the Final Four here for just a moment. But let's start with last night and with Ohio State, Virginia Tech. And it just kind of seemed like Ohio State had been so premised all year on turning people over with the press. We saw it work fabulously against UConn. It didn't work against Virginia Tech. Was that, in essence, the game in your mind?
Absolutely. I think Ohio State all season long has been a team that in their successful games, they're turning you over 20-plus times, and they're scoring 25 to 30 points off of those turnovers. And in the games where they haven't been quite as successful, it's been turning you over less and scoring 10, 15, less than 20 points off of those turnovers. And I think Virginia Tech just really had an outstanding game plan. They were able to get the ball across half court, really get what they wanted once they got in the half court. And kudos to Ohio State, though, with everything that they have been through with injury and coming back. I felt like they put it together quickly in the postseason and looked like a team that could make that Final Four push.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a little bit about that. Just put their season into perspective for us. It's hard not to watch them and think, what would they have been like had they been whole all year? Obviously, J.C. Sheldon's just fantastic. She played such a minimal role in the regular season. They got as high as number 2 in the country. What do you make of Ohio State's season?
I think Kevin did an outstanding job, and that is a group that continued to grind and push and stay together in spite of all of the obstacles and injuries and lack of depth and things that they had to deal with. And they continued to put themselves in positions to be successful. Even when they had a slide in the middle of the season without J.C. Sheldon, it was against really great teams. And so it was just an outstanding season in spite of everything that they had to deal with. And I really do give Kevin and his staff a ton of credit for positioning this team to stay confident, to stay together and make that run. And, I think another big key for Ohio State and obviously looking toward the future is Cody McMahon and how much she grew, how much better she got, how much ownership she took of being a go-to player in the absence of J.C. Sheldon. I thought she was terrific.
Hard not to marvel at her for a freshman. She is so skilled and so ready to go at the college level physically. The future clearly bright, a team that made it past the Sweet 16 for the first time since 1993. As for Maryland last night, we knew it would be a tall task, I guess literally and figuratively. Steph, Virginia, South Carolina is just so big, and they wear you down. I mean, I think that was the thing that really struck me in watching that game, because obviously Maryland, led after the first quarter, and it felt like, I don't want to say they were in control of the game, but they were hanging right there with them. And then the foul trouble started to mount, and South Carolina is so relentless. What did you take from that game last night?
Well, you're right. I mean, they're relentless. They're deep. I mean, their 5 off the bench could be starting at most Division I programs in the country. They're long, they're athletic, and they just continue to push and challenge. And when you give them 25 extra possessions on offensive rebounds, I mean, that is their bread and butter. And then you think about 12 combined minutes in the first half for Sellers and Diamond Miller. You almost have to play a perfect game offensively and defensively to position yourself to beat South Carolina. I felt like Maryland did as good a job as they could have done in that ball game, but it was just too much South Carolina size, too many offensive rebound putbacks.
The offensive rebound numbers are crazy. I mean, you mentioned 25 offensive rebounds. They only missed 38 shots. So, I mean, they got 68% of their shots back on the offensive end. I know they've been really good all year, right around 50%, but 68 is just insane. Kind of same question for Maryland. This was a team that turned over so much of its roster from a year ago, and to come within one game of making it to the Final Four. Brenda Frese was effusive in her praise of her team afterward, and you can understand why. Really a pretty remarkable story, Steph.
85% of their offense was gone. It really is incredible. I don't think anybody in the preseason could have predicted that Maryland would have been one game away from a Final Four. But again, you give so much credit to Brenda Frese and her staff. I think this is one of the best coaching jobs that Brenda Frese has done in her career, and she's had some really outstanding ones. Having to blend new talent, to really be selective in the transfer portal about who's coming into this program, making sure that chemistry was a top priority, and then finding ways to fill in the gaps around Diamond Miller. This is a team that played without a true post player all season long. Now, it caught up to them at the end, but they made mismatches against opponents. They found ways to compete. They found ways to continue to get better, got great production from players who were star players in their previous institutions that came in, played a role coming off the bench. And no, I think that this is just this group, you could tell their chemistry was better. Diamond Miller certainly led the way, but I think this is one of the best coaching jobs Brenda Frese has done in her career.
Beat 5 top 10 teams. Really a great season for the Terps. So let's advance it to the Final Four. Of course, there's still a Big Ten team standing, and that is Iowa. They advanced on Monday. They'll battle the Gamecocks Friday night in Dallas. It just shapes up to be an unbelievable game. That's the second of the two national semifinals. The first one will pit LSU and Virginia Tech. Steph, I cannot wait for this Iowa-South Carolina game. It just feels like it's perfect, right? You've got, first of all, Caitlin Clark against Leah Boston. I realize they play totally different positions, but just the two biggest stars in women's basketball on the court together. And then just this notion of great offense against great defense and who prevails in that. Give us a sense of what you think it would take for Iowa to beat South Carolina.
Well, I think Iowa is a really good matchup because it takes trading threes for twos. South Carolina, they're going to continue to crash the offensive glass. That is exactly what they do, and they're going to get 2-point buckets. Now, they shot the three particularly well against Maryland. That's not the norm for the South Carolina ball club, but they get in you defensively. They make everything difficult. And I think you have to be a team that makes a lot of threes. You trade those threes for twos, and then you have to find ways, because you have to be so efficient on the offensive end of the floor. You have to find ways to not have that one quarter that South Carolina takes advantage, because you mentioned it, Dave, they wear you down throughout the course of the game, and they always have one quarter where they are able to pull away. I think Iowa has the offensive efficiency, particularly the way they've been playing in the postseason, shooting the ball so well, scoring from all 5 positions. If they can continue to stay disciplined defensively, finish plays, if you can keep South Carolina to 15 or under offensive rebounds, not allow them to continue those third and fourth opportunities, I think you got a chance. South Carolina has been the most dominant team in college basketball over the last 2 years, so it's no easy task, but I like the matchup for Iowa.
Yes, you don't win 42 in a row by mistake. I mean, they're really good. So no doubt it's a huge task. Can you remember, Steph, a more anticipated women's game? I mean, obviously you've been around the sport for quite a while as a player, as a coach, as a commentator. But I mean, it just seems to me like this could be the highest rated women's basketball game ever. I mean, I don't think it's unrealistic to think that. It's just the star power between the players and the teams. It just feels like a monumental game for the sport.
I think you're right. You think back to the UConn-Tennessee matchups with Pat Summitt and with Gino, and those were the must-see TVs. Those were the ones that you wanted to see in the national championship or you wanted to see in the regular season. Everybody was tuned into that. I think certainly the audience has grown. There's no question about it over the last decade, and especially over the last 3 to 5 years. Caitlin Clark is must-see TV. Aaliyah Boston is must-see TV. So I think you're absolutely right. And I'm excited about being there. I think this is going to be so much fun for women's basketball.
Yes, I am envious of the fact that you will be there, because I think it's going to be amazing. It should be an incredible atmosphere. Put Caitlin Clark into perspective for us, can you? I mean, I'm not asking you to compare her to a certain player, because I'm not into that. Like, every player's unique and they all do their own thing. But just in terms of the impact on the game, is she the most impactful player? I mean, look, there have been some incredible players, particularly the stars at UConn, Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird. You think about the Meeks at Tennessee and how they had things going there. I mean, they're, like, I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment, but it just seems to me like she's different somehow here, Steph.
She's unique. We haven't seen anyone like her, not just with her skill set, her ability to make things look easy. The game has certainly evolved, and she is on the forefront of that. And, I think that the sport has grown, too, even from a time that you mentioned, a Diana Taurasi, a Sue Bird, a Cheryl Swoops when you go back, a Cheryl Miller, who a lot of the young players don't really know about. What Caitlin Clark is doing in the age of social media, fan engagement, NIL, it's just really incredible. And I think it's lifting women's basketball, lifting the sport to an entirely new level. We have certainly seen crowds in the Big Ten be at the best that they've been since, I don't even know, probably ever. And I think that you attribute that to the type of game that is being played, to stars like Caitlin Clark and what she's doing to change the game, not for women's basketball fans, but for common fans, for people who haven't traditionally watched women's basketball. They tune in because she is so fun to watch. And then they get hooked because they see other players that are a lot of fun to watch.
That's absolutely it, by the way. I absolutely think that's what it is. I think she's just brought in a totally different audience, a new audience, while, of course, maintaining those core fans. It's been amazing. It's been cool to be at the epicenter of it, obviously, in the Big Ten, and to have Caitlin Clark in the league, and certainly for at least one more year. And we'll see going forward from there. Steph, enjoyed the games in Dallas this weekend. I really appreciate you taking a little time out here.
Will do. Thanks, Dave.
Pretty cool tweet from our colleague Lisa Byington after she called another NCAA men's tourney this year with Andy Katz, Steve Smith, Avery Johnson. Grateful for another March. Well said out of LB. And Lisa joining us now. Lisa, this is your third year of doing play-by-play for games in the men's tournament. How would you compare the experience as the years go on, from the first time when you were new to it to where you were this year?
First of all, it is the hardest thing that I do of all the sports at all the different levels, but I always say it's the most gratifying. There is nothing like it with the first and the second round, especially as a play-by-play, where you're preparing for 8 different teams. You have 4 games in one day. It is an unprecedented task, but then when you're done with it, again, it's the most satisfying. So, Dave, it was unusual. So my year one of doing play-by-play was the COVID year, and it was the bubble year in Indianapolis. And so all the teams, all the broadcasting teams, all the college teams, everyone was all in one spot, which was unusual. And so whereas we're used to, as broadcasters and as fans, preparing for, okay, we've got these 8 teams, and then the teams that advance from the first round, we will have those same teams that we'll prep for in the second round. And that was not the case. I mean, we were all over the place. I remember that first year getting an assignment. I was with Steve Smith, and we got a game assignment literally the day before. So we're calling a game, an NCAA tournament game, and in our email, we get our next assignment of 2 completely different teams that we haven't prepped for all week. And oh, by the way, you got to call their game the next day. So that bubble year was my first year as a play-by-play, and I can't compare it to anything. The fans, there was only, a select number of fans and family in attendance. So that was year one. And then the last 2 years, including this year, was more what we're used to, with different sites. You've got what your 8 teams are, and you've got unbelievable atmospheres across the country in these arenas.
Well, it gets easier, right? That's the beauty of it. If you start with not knowing your teams the day before, it only gets easier as the years go on. This was a crazy tournament. It has been a crazy tournament. It is as unpredictable a Final Four grouping as we've seen, but obviously that has trickled down throughout the tournament and has led us to where we are now. What do you attribute the craziness of this tournament this year to?
With the men's NCAA tournament, we have gotten accustomed to expecting the unexpected, and now we have to expect the unprecedented, where you have three teams that have never been to the Final Four before, where after the first weekend, we had missed half of our number one seeds, and it was a record loss in terms of when we lost all four number one seeds this year, in terms of, since the tournament has been expanded to 64 teams and now beyond. So, to answer your question, I think there's a couple of things. I think transfer portal and COVID year eligibility has really changed the landscape of college basketball. And so you look at an FDU, for an example, who had only won 4 games the year before. Transfers were such a big part of their story, and to get the upset with their story. San Diego State, their 2 leading scorers are transfers. And so, Dave, when I'm prepping for these NCAA tournament teams, in my experience, I'm looking, and we are literally, I'm like, that is a 23-year-old senior.
Yeah,
and I had to process all that. But that is very commonplace. We have 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds, sometimes 24-year-olds on these rosters that has never been seen before in the history of college basketball. So you put on maybe some of these older players on some of these Cinderella teams competing against some of these Power 5, blue blood schools that are competing against freshmen and sophomores, and granted, very talented freshmen and sophomores. But let's not forget, those freshmen and sophomores are on this huge national stage for the first time. And I don't care how talented you are, that takes some adjustment to get to. And the other reason too, Dave, is I see the playing style changing, more space and pace. And so if you get hot, and this is the beauty of the NCAA tournament, right? If you get hot for one player or a couple of players on one night and you can shoot the basketball, that is a recipe for some of the upsets that we have seen.
I know you still follow the women's game closely, too. You still call some games. You obviously played in the NCAA tournament yourself. I'm interested in your thoughts on this, and we were talking with Steph White a little bit earlier in the show here about Caitlin Clark and about this Final Four, Iowa against South Carolina, these incredible matchups that we've got coming up here this weekend. Let's just be honest about the men's tournament right now, LB. It's not exactly a programmer's dream, right? I mean, it's crazy. We have all these upsets. As you said, you get 3 new teams in the Final Four. But we were talking about this yesterday with Andy Katz. From a programming perspective, you want to have upsets in the early round, and then you want the blue bloods to get through. And it didn't really work out this year. Do you see this as even a bigger opportunity for the women's tournament this weekend to maybe steal a little bit of the spotlight?
It already has, in my opinion. So in being the voice of the Milwaukee Bucks, I am in an NBA circle. That's where I live more so in the basketball world than any other circles right now. And we're on the road right now with the Milwaukee Bucks. And when Caitlin Clark was playing Louisville, I'll tell you this, there were so many people involved, support staff people with the Milwaukee Bucks who were paying attention to Caitlin Clark. I mean, we just finished a game in Detroit last night, and the conversation I had with some of the support staff members, this is in the NBA now. It wasn't about the NBA game we just played. It was about Caitlin Clark and how magnificent she is. And I listened to some of your interview with Steph White and fully agree. So, to transcend women's basketball, and I hate saying this, but this is still a little bit where women's basketball is. It's still a little bit of a niche fan sport. So to help grow the game, you need a few things. First of all, you need access. You need to point people on where to find it. And I think that promotion, the platforms have changed. The promotion's gotten better. We now see games on Fox and ABC now for women's college basketball in places that we haven't seen before. That is going to grow the fan base. You got to be on a winning team. Right. And Caitlin Clark is on obviously a Final Four team now. But, to Steph's point, and I truly agree, you have to have a player that transcends the sport. So now you have people in circles like the NBA who might not watch women's college basketball who are now paying attention to it. And that is the beauty of Caitlin Clark. She has unparalleled basketball talent, but she has an engaging personality to match that moment and that spotlight. And in this world of social media where more people might not watch the game, but they might watch a Caitlin Clark clip on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, now they might watch her game. And so she is making a non-women's college basketball fan a fan. And that is the beauty right now to this Caitlin Clark story.
LB, we want to have you on in part because of Women's History Month and what a trailblazer you are. You mentioned you're the play-by-play voice of the Milwaukee Bucks. You are the first woman to be a full-time play-by-play voice of an NBA team. You were the first woman to call play-by-play in the men's NCAA tourney. You're the first woman to call play-by-play of football for the Big Ten Network. You know, it's funny, you and I have known each other for a long time, and I always think about that little phrase that people like to joke about. It took me 15 years to become an overnight sensation. That's pretty much kind of what happened with you. As you stop it and ponder it, what do you think about kind of everything that's happened here, really in like this last handful of years for you?
Well, I'm so grateful for the opportunities. And, you know, all it takes is for someone to believe in you. And there have been men in hiring positions, and there have been women in hiring positions. And I haven't been the greatest broadcaster in the world, but I have put in the work. And I think that that's important. And so you put in the work, and you have a belief that at some point that's going to pay off. And at some point, the right person is going to recognize that work and that talent in you. And you made a joke, and I love that you brought that up, because I think people now have seen the headlines with me. Well, Lisa Byington's doing this, and this. I just didn't roll out of bed and decide I wanted to become an NBA broadcaster. Or I didn't just roll out of bed this morning and say, you know what would be really cool is calling the NCAA men's tournament. There was a lot of jobs that I took that didn't pay a lot of money. And there's a lot of hours, and I still work a lot of hours, but there was a lot of grinding hours of holding a camera myself and doing my own editing and writing and all that stuff that have led to these opportunities and have opened these doors. And so I always say that, you know, it's the grunt job that gets you to the glory job. And I firmly believe that. But with that comes the support and the belief of some people, and even you, Dave, who, you know, looked at my tape before I was with Big Ten Network, before Big Ten Network even began. And you saw something in me as well. And you said, you know what, I think she's got a little bit of talent. So I hope I didn't screw it up too much for you and some other people.
No, I would say quite the opposite. But it's been amazing. It really is. I mean, we literally met the day the network launched, and you were here to cover it for your television station in Lansing. And yeah, I mean, it was obvious to me from the get-go that you had talent, incredible work ethic, and it's just been amazing to see it all come to fruition for you. And I think one of the coolest moments, and I want to leave you with this, was when Commissioner Warren announced the Lisa Byington Award. And it goes to the most outstanding female broadcaster in our Student U program, which is on every campus here in the Big Ten, student broadcasters. I think a lot about what if you and I had gotten this opportunity when we were in college, different times. I'm significantly older than you are, but it's really an amazing opportunity for young people. So bring us up to date on the Lisa Byington Award and how people can get their application in here.
Yeah, I'm happy to say we're in year number 2 now. And so we have set a deadline for April 21st of applications. And you said it great, Dave. It's for a female broadcaster across the Student U programs of all 14 Big Ten schools. And so Reagan Holgate was the inaugural winner last year from Michigan State. And what you get are a few things. First of all, you get feedback, you know, from me and some other people from the Big Ten Conference, from the Big Ten Network. You get feedback about your work. I am committing to a relationship with this person, with all of the winners, in terms of whatever they need. If it's constant feedback throughout, you know, this journey of their career, if it's helping with networking, if it's just lending an ear, like, you have me to use as a resource now. And the other great thing is Reagan Holgate got a full day at Big Ten Network. So how many people can say that they had a network experience for one full day, got to meet everyone behind the scenes, from producers to directors to some on-air talent, you know, to our you know, one of our bosses and Mark Halsey, and sat down with him in an office and just kind of exchanged what he's looking for in the business. I mean, you just don't have that kind of access normally for a college student. And on top of that, Reagan got to tape some stuff in our set that you're sitting in right now, Dave. And so had a tape to walk away from. So all of that is included in the experience. And we started this interview, Dave, with people who gave me a chance and people who believed in me. And so I hope that that's what this award does. It opens up the door for so many deserving, worthy female broadcasters out there across the Big Ten schools. And hopefully we can give them the right chance and the right opportunity with this.
It's a fabulous idea. It's wonderful that you've thrown yourself into it to the degree that you have, and I just can't imagine a more deserving person to have their name on an award like this. Lisa, really appreciate your insights. Great to catch up with you as always, and have a great call tomorrow night.
All right. Thanks, Dave.
It does not get much bigger than the Basketball Hall of Fame. Theresa Grentz inducted this past year, class that included Tim Hardaway, Manu Ginobili, Lindsey Whalen, Bob Huggins, George Karl, some serious luminaries. Grentz was National Player of the Year in college at Immaculata. She took Rutgers to a national championship as a head coach, also had a great run at Illinois. Theresa Grentz joining us now. She is today's big interview. And Coach, wanted to have you on in part because of Women's History Month, but in part just to pick your brain about what's going on in women's basketball right now. We had 3 Big Ten teams involved in Elite Eight games here over the last couple of nights. What stands out to you as you watch women's basketball in this moment?
Oh, Dave, it's so entertaining. And the audience that's watching the games today getting bigger and bigger. And the players themselves, their skill level it's great. It's really, really fun.
It certainly has been. Obviously, Caitlin Clark grabs the headlines. What do you think when you see her out on the court?
Well, when I heard about her when she was just coming up, I thought, what is this kid? Let me take a look at this kid. And I did. I wanted to see what she was. But what most fascinated me about her was the finish. When she would finish to the basket, her hands and where she wanted to place the ball, she never just chucked it up there. And I'm talking about on driving and what they call that now, downhill. That connotation in my day and age was not a good one, Dave. But anyway, now. But her placement of where she wanted the ball to be, how she wanted it off the board, that fascinated me. And then, of course, as you watch, there's more and more games. The whole thing, what Lisa and her staff have done with that whole team and how that they've come along, it's fascinating. It's very, very entertaining, and it's great for the game.
It is indeed. You grew up in Philly, which is a huge basketball town. How did you get into basketball as a player?
Well, I grew up in a neighborhood of all boys, so I had 2 choices. I could either learn to do what the boys were doing, or I could help my mother clean. She did get a hold of us, but I loved competition, and those guys, they taught us baseball, football, and the last one was basketball. And basketball at that time was the only thing that you could play, girls could play in a school. So we did that, and it was just, I loved competing. I loved being a player. I loved putting it all out there and going for it. And got lucky enough. I went to Cardinal O'Hara High School. We won a bunch of championships there. Went on to Immaculata, and we were playing with the kids in Philadelphia Catholic League. And you talk about Philadelphia, and we knew each other. So when we got to Immaculata, which was an all-women's college, we said, "Listen, we're going to play 4 years. We're not going to lose," because I didn't know about what was going on in the rest of the country in the national tournament, which was started when we were in college. And I said, we're going to play 4 years. We're not going to lose a game. And they all said, that sounds good to us. So we did. We played 4 years. We lost 2. And I'll tell you, Dave, I'm still a little annoyed about the 2 that we did lose. But that was the thing. And then on to coaching. And I never wanted to be a coach. It wasn't something I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go coach women's basketball, because that was not the thing to do. Society just wasn't, they weren't ready for that. So
I want to ask you a little bit about Immaculata. I've always found that story to be really fascinating, just because it's this
it's
tiny
a great
women's school
story
outside of Philly. And I mean, just for people to understand, like, you guys won multiple national championships.
That's right.
How did this tiny Catholic school outside of Philadelphia, other than the fact that you were really good and you were surrounded by some other players who were really good, like, how did it become a powerhouse? I understand it was a different time, but you were still the best team in the country.
It was a different time, and we were the best team in the country, and we were little. And the other thing, Dave, there were no divisions. It wasn't Division 1, 2, and 3. It was everybody's all in. So it was our 5 against everybody else's 5. And we took our 5 and laid it all out there. And of course, I do think there was this, looking back, I think there was divine providence because we should have never won, but we did. And we played the University of, we played Indiana U, we played Maryland, we played Tennessee, we played all the big schools, and Washington State. And it's a great story. One where we had we had 8, I think, local Philadelphia players come in. I mean, it was all regional. It reminded me a lot of the Villanova team this year because they had so many local kids. But and everybody caught on because in Philadelphia at the time, the pro teams were not doing well. So we were the big story, and newspapers were a big thing then. You didn't have social media, you didn't have cable news and things. So that was the story. People loved it. We became the girls of the hour, or whatever. And lo and behold, we went on and we won those 3 championships. And it really did. That first championship, that changed my life, and for the rest of us as well. And then we've kept those friendships. In fact, tonight for dinner, I'm going to meet with Denise Conway Crawford and Judy Mara Martelli. Then we still get together. We're having dinner. So it was a great time. It was truly very, very special.
It's an incredible story. And then, as you said, you went from there to coaching, and kind of the big breakthrough was at Rutgers. You became the first full-time women's coach in the country at the college level. Mm-hmm. What were the resources that were devoted to women's college basketball when you got that job at Rutgers?
Oh, geez. Rutgers, give them credit. They wanted to have the first full-time women's basketball coach, right, because up to that time, it was physical education. You were teaching classes and coaching 3 or 4 sports. I think Jody Conrad had said she was teaching 9 activities and 3 classes and coaching a couple other teams. And we didn't do it for the money. We really, we did it for the love of the game. And they wanted a full-time coach, and they wanted it. The first one was Kathy Rush, and rightfully so. Kathy was way ahead of her time. She had coached us at Immaculata. They wanted Kathy, or they wanted Lucille Cavalis, who was at Queens. And both of those women turned it down. So I took it. And I was always for a chance. What's up for this? And took that job. And my salary for the week, for the year, was less than most of these coaches make in 1 week. So we're making progress, Dave. We're making progress.
It paid off. You won a national championship there. What does that team mean to you, the national championship team at Rutgers?
That team's special. Last night on the Big Ten Network, there's a documentary that a bunch of guys who were on the women's, they were on the radio back at Rutgers, and they followed us, and they did that, and they covered that game back then 40 years ago. So they got this idea that they were going to do a documentary with it. Lo and behold, they found the tape of the radio thing. I had a film that had never been opened to the game. They digitized the whole thing, and they spent, I believe, 3 or 4 years putting it together. They did a masterful job. And last night it was on the Big Ten Network. They viewed it nationally, which was great. And those players had a chance to really be recognized. We played Texas, and my heavens, I mean, Jody's teams were just the class. They had been, I think they won 32 games straight before they played us that night. And after that game, they went on and won 36 or 38 in a row and won the national championship the next couple of years. So we were right in the middle of that. And, playing Texas was a great experience, great athletes. But when you look at those players that we had, June Olkowski, who coached nationally. She was coached at Northwestern in the Big Ten. She coached at Butler. You have Chris Daly, who's done a masterful job with Gino at Connecticut. You had Patty Coyle, who coached at, so was an assistant at Purdue and a head coach at Loyola, and also coached the New York Liberty in New York. And Mary Coyle Klinger, who's still coaching at Rutgers Prep and has won every high school award, and you go on. I mean, I had a great group. I really did. I had kids that loved the game, kids that wanted it, and all I wanted for them was for them to have the experience that I had a couple years earlier. And and we worked out. It was great. I love those kids. And the thing is, they're really not kids. They're retiring. But they'll always be my kids.
They'll always be your kids. Obviously went from there and had great success in Illinois, made 5 NCAA tournaments there as well. I want to leave you with the Hall of Fame, though. What was that moment like? I mean, I mentioned the luminaries you went in with. You had Charles Barkley among those introducing you, which I thought was fascinating. Give us a sense, encapsulate that weekend in Springfield.
Geez, I hope I can. It's very emotional. Something they said, oh, you should have been in a long time ago. But I always say a delay does not mean denied. And it came at the absolute perfect time because I had my 4 grandkids with us, Emily, Jack, Luke, and Liam. My 93-year-old mother was able to make the trip. My sons, Carl and Kevin, were there. Kevin with his wife, Kelly, and Carl was there. And he hadn't made the trip when the announcement came a year ago to New Orleans. He wasn't feeling well. And he was able to be there that weekend. And I think it was great. It was something that I will remember and cherish for the rest of my life. It was a wonderful, wonderful time. And I'm grateful to all the schools, all the administrators who gave me a shot at it, Kathy Rush and Immaculata for everything that they gave and allowed me to do. So I'm grateful to them, to all my players who played their hearts out and gave everything. You don't get there by yourself. And for all that and the fans, I owe them a lot, and I'm extremely grateful.
Coach, this was such a pleasure. Thanks for taking a little time out with us. Congratulations on all of these honors and awards and all that you accomplished. Thanks so much for your time.
Looking forward to Friday and Sunday.
Our big stat, focusing on the fool's errand we're about to embark on, predicting the Big Ten basketball season. Purdue was picked 5th this past year. They finished 1st. Northwestern was picked 13th. They finished tied for 2nd. Ohio State was predicted to finish 6th. They ended up 13th. It was a wild season, and so with that, we asked Trent Meacham, without knowing who's going to be in the portal, without knowing who goes to the NBA, without knowing any of that, to tell us who the top teams are going to be next year. Good luck with this.
Yeah, way too early. Yeah. To this minute, we're learning things.
Yes.
Jay Epps this morning announced he's in the transfer portal. I have Illinois at number 5 preseason right now, and that's largely due to Brad Underwood has had great success in the transfer portal. Alfonso Plummer 2 years ago, then Matt Meyer, Terrence Shannon, Dane Danger this past year. I expect them to return a stable of talent. They have a lot of talent. If they can do that, if they can land a big name in the transfer portal, I think they'll be up there in the top half of the conference. I also think Michigan and Indiana, they're going to go big game hunting, I think, this offseason and have some big names. After Illinois, I'm looking at 4 teams that had good success this year, and I think we'll build on that success. And I'm going to start with Maryland from there. Jameer Young just announced he returns, 5th-year senior. That's really big for them. Can Hakeem Hart, Dante Scott come back for a 5th year? You think about the experience. And I love that Kevin Willard was able to keep some of these guys in year 1. I think after the success of this year, getting to the NCAA tournament, tasting some success, he's going to return some more guys this next year. I expect Julian Reese to take a big step up. So I believe Maryland will be there. Now I'm going to the Northwestern Wildcats. One of the best stories from this past year, obviously, the 2 guards, Boo Buie, Chase Audige. Again, if you have experience, that really bodes well. Boo Buie as that leader. I think Northwestern is going to be up there. I also expect guys like Brooks Barnheiser, Nick Martinelli, 2 big physical guards, another big guy, Matt Nicholson. I expect them to only improve. So I think Northwestern is going to be a really strong team this next year.
It's going to be fascinating to see Dubuie and Audige come back. And again, like we saw Jameer Young do it, I think a lot of it will hinge on that. But if they do, yeah, I mean, it feels like the sky's the limit, right? Because you have guys who will get better. So a lot hinging there. And I think that kind of runs throughout this, right? So much hinges on who comes
hinging,
back.
Yeah.
But how about the top 2 then?
Okay, yeah, the top 2, I'm going to go with Purdue. And obviously, huge asterisk, the big guy, Zach Edey. I expect him to come back, though. I think his prospects, the stage of the Big Ten Conference, Purdue, unfinished business maybe as well in the NCAA tournament. So if they can get him back, typically you see the most improvement from freshman to sophomore years. Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith, those 2 freshman guards. I expect them to take another step. Can they add a little bit of quickness maybe, additional playmaking? I think that's needed for Purdue as much as shooting. I think that the quickness and playmaking is needed. So I expect them to be a top 10 team, a real contender next season. And finally, the Michigan State Spartans. Again, if someone, Tyson Walker, Malik Hall, experience, skill. A.J. Hoggard was terrific in the NCAA tournament. Jay Nakins, I think, will take another step. Those trio of big men, Carson Cooper, Jackson Kohler, Matty Sissoko, I expect them to improve. And now they got 2 5-star freshmen, Jeremy Fears, another guard, Xavier Booker, big out of Indianapolis. So I expect the Spartans to be knocking on the door of the Final Four next season.
Top 5 recruiting class, so that helps a lot. And again, guards matter so much. I'm with you on Purdue, too. It does feel like, though, maybe you need to go into the portal, get a knockdown shooter, and get, as you said, maybe a little more speed and experience in the backcourt. Those are the 2 things you'd go for,
Some
right?
quickness and some additional, get another guy that can make a play, create for his team, create for himself. I think that's needed from Purdue.
This was courageous on your part.
Well, sometimes there's producers, other people say, hey, here's some ideas.
Yeah.
It'll be, this offseason is going to be really exciting. I'll tell you that.
I'm just going to say we're not going to hold you to this one. All right. But it's fun to think about it. Fun to
I appreciate that.
Spin forward a little bit. NIT semis this very evening in Las Vegas. First time they've ever been there. Wisconsin gets a matchup with North Texas. That is the early game. Late game features Utah Valley and UAB, and then the winners play for the title on Thursday night. So, Trent, what's it going to take for Wisconsin to emerge against a UNT team that really wants to slow things down?
Fasten your seatbelts, right?
Yes.
North Texas, the slowest paced team in the country. Wisconsin, they play slow as well. So, be an interesting matchup. North Texas has a guard, Tyler Perry, goes for 17 a game. He's taken over 33 so far in their 3 games, so he's one guy that can really get hot. Now, Wisconsin has had some big performances in this tournament. Stephen Crowell with 37. Chucky Hepburn goes for 27. Max Klesmit has been playing well, and I think that's big for them. He came on the second half of the season, averaging almost 14 a game in the 3 NIT games. So is he getting some confidence, some momentum for next season? I think that's so crucial. Tyler Wall, does he get going? He's a guy that could come back next season. Disappointment not making the NCAA tournament, but this would be big. If you can come away from the season with the title, maybe have some momentum going into the offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the way you have to look at the NIT. If you're a power conference team,
yes,
right, you don't, especially Wisconsin, who've been to 22 of the last 23 NCAA tournaments, you don't set out your season looking to be in this tournament, but if you're going to be there, you try to win it and gain some momentum.
You got an opportunity to win a title, and you have an opportunity for guys to develop, gain some confidence. That can be huge going into the offseason.
Fascinated to see how the Badgers fare tonight against UNT. Be back here tomorrow to talk that and much more over. See you then on Big Ten Today.